Hi, Raquel.
Hey.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for attending this urgent briefing today on a dangerous proposal by the Trump administration to undermine New York and New Jersey's fundamental protections against high-cost predatory loans. We're appreciate everyone getting on today. I'm gonna, as we start in a moment, I'm gonna first begin with some just logistical matters, and then we'll get right into the program. So first of all, there will be an opportunity at the end to answer questions, to ask questions, and speakers and the elected officials that are on the line today and community leaders will be able to take your questions at the end. So please hold your questions until then. And another point to raise here at the beginning, and we'll reiterate it later when we do open things up for questions, is that the question and answer period will be for members of the media only. All right, so we'll get there shortly. And we're gonna kick things off this afternoon with Sarah Ludwig, founder and co-director of New Economy Project, and Beverly Brown Ruggia from New Jersey Citizen Action, who will get us started. And thanks again. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you, Andy. My name is Sarah Ludwig, and I'm the founder and co-director of New Economy Project based in New York City. We are here today, as Andy said, to address a very urgent matter and are with the banks chairs from both legislative houses in New York and New Jersey and others to voice our strong opposition to a Trump proposal that poses a direct and serious threat to the people and communities of our states. The acting banking regulator, by way of background, who is a recent Trump appointee, has proposed allowing online financial technology companies, online lenders, to circumvent our state's interest rate caps. These are known as usury laws. Like, these are laws that we have had on the books in both states for centuries. They have proposed to the Trump administration, the national bank regulator, has proposed allowing these online financial technology companies to enter into sham partnerships with national banks so that they too can get around our state consumer protection laws like national banks do. In other words, these largely unregulated online lenders would be allowed to make loans to New Yorkers and New Jerseyans that otherwise categorically violate our state usury laws. It is a flagrant action, clearly intended to enrich these companies. And we are gathered here today because we are very concerned that this would unleash predatory payday loans and other high-cost car title and retail loans in our states. New Jersey and New York are in fact among 16 states in this country that effectively ban high-cost lending. That's almost 100 million Americans, a third of this country, that stand to be gravely harmed by this proposal. As we can attest in New York and New Jersey, the sky does not fall when you have strong interest rate caps. In fact, it's good for everybody. And we have fought long and hard to preserve these laws against aggressive industry attempts to circumvent New York's and New Jersey's laws, and we intend to keep them strong. We work closely with individuals who are in states that don't have these kinds of laws like we have in New York and New Jersey, where these kinds of products cause tremendous economic and emotional harm to people. Small business owners, particularly people and communities of color that are targeted for these high-cost loans, end up ensnared in these catastrophic debt traps that stay with them over the long term as these companies extract wealth from people who by definition are struggling to get from check to check. As you'll hear, thanks to New Jersey and New York's strong state usury laws, our state's residents save an estimated $1 billion in fees every year that would otherwise be siphoned by predatory payday and car title lenders. And again, this is particularly communities of color, immigrants, older people in our states that bear the brunt of this noxious lending. And when you consider the economic devastation caused by the pandemic that we're in, it's clear just how dangerous this proposal is. So we're holding this event today because public comments on the proposal are due today. And the comment process itself tells you everything you need to know about how they're trying to ram this through. They put out for public comment a proposal that would make sweeping changes to our entire banking system, as proposed by someone who's an acting regulator who comes from the very industry that this would serve, that this would benefit. During a pandemic, during the month of August, with public comments due, we are joining with people all over the country in vehemently opposing this proposal. And we are so glad that our New York and New Jersey legislators are weighing in so forcefully on this as well. There is a tremendous amount at stake, and you'll be hearing more. So thank you, Andy. I'll pass it to Beverly Brown-Ruggia from New Jersey Citizen Action.
Thank you, Sarah. So glad to be here with all of you today. With interest rates that average 400% and get much higher, payday lending is a ruinous form of usury. It's nothing more than legal loan sharking. This proposed rule would allow, as Sarah said, lenders, predatory payday lenders, to circumvent good state laws and prey on those who are hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. This rule would set back the ongoing struggle for racial and social economic equity, and it would significantly hamper the efforts of states like ours to recover from the pandemic. The $1 billion savings in probably fees alone, as Sarah mentioned, that would be lost to New Yorkers and New Jerseyans if the rule is implemented, should be used to pay for food, rent, housing, medicine, utilities, and other essentials, and it should not be going to lining the pockets of payday lenders. Instead of implementing policies that expand access to safe and affordable credit, instead of sending stabilizing aid to states and providing individuals with meaningful, no strings attached direct aid, we have an acting OCC director advocating for an industry that depends on its borrowers to default, take out back-to-back loans, which trap them in an endless cycle of debt. As the nation confronts the sources of racial injustice and is overwhelmed by the gaps in our economic safety net, which COVID has exposed and made worse, this rule is an example of the clear and present danger that the Trump administration's economic policies pose to all of us. It's particularly onerous and cruel that the administration would ram through such a policy that will facilitate, help exploitative lending that targets Black and brown people, people of low income, and will take advantage of frontline essential workers, small businesses, when they are facing health threats, unemployment, losing their homes, and shuttering their businesses. We must tell the OCC to respect our state usury laws, to rescind this rule today, and we must continue to fight to stop the debt trap everywhere. Thank you.
Sarah, you're muted.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce the chair of our New York State Assembly Banks Committee, Thomas Abenanti, who represents Assembly District 92, the western part of Westchester. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank all of you for setting up this press conference today. And I want to say hello to my colleagues from New Jersey. Nice to see you. Look, we're here today to publicly announce our opposition and the opposition of our colleagues in New York and New Jersey to a Trump administration proposed rule, which is intended to change the long-standing balance between federal control of federal banks and state control of the rest of the lending industry doing business in their states. We're here to explain to the public why they should care. They should care because what looks like a tweak to an obscure banking regulation is really a Trump administration attempt in the middle of the summer, in the middle of a pandemic, to eviscerate important state laws that protect our residents and small businesses. We need to stop the Trump administration's brazen attempt to override longtime state consumer protections that stop predatory lenders from ensnaring everyday people who live in New York and New Jersey. With the federal $600 unemployment check gone and tightened eligibility for safety net programs, everyday people and small businesses are desperate for money to survive the COVID-19 economic crisis. And they're prime targets for deceptively marketed exploitive loans. So I want to make 2 points. The first one, the new Trump rule would be a fundamental change to our banking system, with the federal government intruding on the long recognized states' rights to regulate companies doing businesses in their states to protect their residents from being exploited by unfair predatory lending practices. On that first point, since colonial times, states have regulated those doing businesses within their borders. You heard Sarah talk about the interest rate caps. In New York, it's 25%. In New Jersey, it's 30%. The US government doesn't have a cap on what an unscrupulous lender can extract from a desperate borrower, except US military personnel, they've got a 36% cap. But for everybody else, no cap at all. Now, a Trump-appointed, unconfirmed acting regulator wants to benefit the industry from which he came in endangering the residents from New York and New Jersey. Now, why does it matter? The proposed rule will unleash an avalanche of predatory lenders who deceptively hide true lending costs. Our families and small businesses who are desperate are easy to exploit. They rely on government to protect them. They expect that in New York and in New Jersey, where banking is highly regulated, if a loan is being offered, it must have been scrutinized and it must have been sanitized by state officials. So the impact here is clear on our poor and minority communities, and also on the families and businesses in our middle class communities as well. The rule undercuts the state's efforts to provide needed safe, affordable credit through community development financial institution programs, through community banks, through community credit unions, even through the federal SBA. So we need financial products that build, not extract wealth. This Trump administration proposal is another giveaway to businesses that succeed by exploiting unsuspecting good Americans who are trying to feed their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Avenatti. For over many years, the New Jersey legislature has worked hard to make consumer protections in New Jersey amongst the strongest in the nation. Governor Murphy's administration has strived to strengthen and expand consumer protections in our state while working hard to mitigate the horrific damage that has been inflicted on New Jerseyans by the Trump administration. Our Attorney General Graywall has been outspoken and joined with states like New York to protect usury laws across the nation. Predatory payday lending not only puts individuals at risk of financial ruin, but it also sucks up billions of dollars needed to keep our economies healthy. It is absolutely unacceptable for an acting OCC director, yet to be approved by Congress, to waltz in and undermine our long fought for consumer protections for the sake of industry profits. Predatory lending should not be enabled. Predatory lenders should not be enabled to prey on consumers by evading state laws. The Trump administration's current proposed action would bypass longstanding protections in New Jersey and New York that were put in place to shield our most vulnerable residents from getting trapped by those lenders. With so many struggling during the COVID-19 pandemic, these protections are more important than ever. We urge all of our elected leaders to raise their voices in opposition to this proposed rule. Today, we are proud to have two legislators from New Jersey with us who are going to do just that. Senator Nellie Poe chairs the New Jersey Senate Commerce Committee. Whether protecting the right of consumers to use cash to make purchases, or banning fees to freeze a credit file when identity theft is suspected, or requiring credit reports to be made available in Spanish and other languages, Senator Poe is a champion of consumer protection. Senator Poe.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you so very much for that introduction. I too want to thank everyone for allowing me to join today. This is a very important conference that we're doing, and we're banding together and doing so. So what I would say is that while New Jersey and New York struggled to balance state budgets in the midst of a public health crisis with severe economic consequences, this proposal by the Trump administration takes aim at those who are most in need at a time when they are most vulnerable. It's been said, and it's important to repeat, that residents of New Jersey save more than $347 million each year thanks to the state's usury law we have in place, and for good reasons. Combined with New York, as you've heard, this is $1 billion for families in need to put food on the table, to have a home, and to support daily expenses that allows them to survive. During this time of crisis, this is especially important. Thanks to the vigorous enforcement of our state consumer protection laws, New Jersey residents have been spared the plague of predatory lending. The proposed rule would usher in high-cost predatory loan products that would harm people and small business owners. And it would strip wealth from our low-income communities, immigrant communities, and communities of color. The proposed rule is nothing less than an attempt to preempt protections we have on the books and to evade state laws designed to protect people. It is truly a shameless scheme to exploit a crisis and take advantage of those most in need. This action is cruel and foolish, and it will unleash the predatory practices on the most vulnerable. It's a shell game that would allow predatory lenders to bypass long-standing New Jersey protections and prey on our most vulnerable residents. This at a time when they struggle to pay for necessities while the COVID-19 pandemic continues to devastate our economy. There is also the added insult of racial injustice. We know the predatory practices of abusive payday lending often targets people of color, especially African Americans and Latinos. The harm will fall on them, their families, and their communities. This kind of debt will also impose additional costs on states that will have to provide borrowers with assistance to meet their basic needs. And you've heard it said before by some of my colleagues, that includes food, utility, and housing assistance, and less likely to meet their child support obligations. We have to stand together as a state and states and work together with organizations to fight this. We really have to make that loud and clear and make that message go out. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to share my thoughts and comments today.
Thank you, Senator. Assemblyman John McKeon, who has served as my own mayor in West Orange for many, many years, and now gets to go to Trenton to represent me there as my assembly person, is chairman. He chairs the Assembly Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee. He has fought hard for consumer protections since the day I met him. specifically related to consumer health care, prescription drug prices, and forced arbitration clauses. Another voice for consumers. I give you Assemblyman John McCain.
All right. Assemblymember, you need to unmute.
All right, I hit the button that said unmute. Do you have me?
You're all set.
You have me?
You're
Great. Phyllis, what I started to say is I was dreaming back to 25 years ago when you so warmly received me at your front door when I was running for township council. And I've been following your career ever since, and you're nothing other than an inspiration. I'm really proud to know you. And that goes for all of New Jersey Citizen Action and my new friends with the New Economy Project. All of the advocates are inspirational to folks like Senator Poe, who's my friend and someone I greatly admire, and my new friend, Assemblyman Tom Abenati. And Tom, you must be really good at what you do because you're a Democrat in Westchester County. So it speaks pretty well.
Thank you.
I guess it's Tom. You had referenced the history of our country, and it goes to pre-Revolutionary War when we were keeping interest rates as colonies at 8% to save ourselves from the British profiteers. And then once the Revolutionary War was fought and won, each state had their own numbers to protect their citizens, which ran about 6%. And I can bore you with the history, all the way through the Civil War and up, frankly, until 1987. And at that time, the federal government decided that the banks and their profits were more important than people. And that just blew off, those federal caps. Now, happily, responsible legislators in New Jersey, New York, and many, many other states put their own caps in play. And as such, we've protected our citizens just like the tradition going back before this wasn't even a country. The interesting part of this, and I want us to consider it, and it's ironic, in 2016, as in part to try to explain in part how it was that Donald Trump could become our president, there was a book of some note, I know, pronounce it the wrong way, but it's Hillbilly Eligibility or something along that pronunciation. And it was interesting because the author had noted how he got paid twice a month and he needed to get a payroll loan in order to avoid paying interest penalties on both his rent when it was due as well as his car payment. And where government sometimes tries to help just to cut out those loans altogether, they don't understand maybe the needs of the people. So we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as sad as it is that there are so many of our fellow citizens that even need to access these loans. They are an important lifeline for them to be able to live, month to month and to continue to survive. So that makes what this Trump administration is now considering just so I don't know if mean is the right word, or just so tone deaf, or just so outrageous as it relates to what it will mean to those individuals that need to do that. In New Jersey, it's one thing if you need to borrow $300 because you need to get that done for the reasons I stated, but at least as much money as it is, at the worst, you're going to pay $90 of interest. If this was to be permitted, and using South Dakota as an example, as one of the host banks, where their cap is $150, that same $300 loan will cost $450. Now, how long will it take? 6 months before the individual that's being responsible and looking to pay their bills and do the right things will be in a position just to give up and get into all of the problems that come with overburdensome debt, and frankly, all of the economic impact that will ultimately have on all of us. So as usual, this is a short-sighted policy from a short-sighted administration that's nothing other than selfish. And for those around them, including the banks that I'm sure are thrilled about this, shame on them. And I look forward to working collectively with this entire group to have our voices heard and to advocate to the people that placed us in these positions of trust, people, quite frankly, that will never even know our names. they're counting on us. So let's all work as a team and do our best to stop this. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I am super pleased and delighted to introduce State Senator James Sanders from the 10th Senate District of New York, who is our Senate Banks Committee Chair, representing also communities in Southeast Queens. Welcome, Senator. We're so glad you're here. And with no further ado, if you can unmute, then we'll
I finally did. Good to see you again. Good to see all of you again. I've had the pleasure of being on the right side of the barricade with most of the people here. So it's always good to know who is still fighting for the people. The real question that we have to ask is, why are we here? Didn't we resolve this some time ago? Didn't we see the destruction that the banking crisis took place in 2008? Just to remind us of how we got here, the predatory practices of the banking community caused the greatest loss of Black wealth since slavery, the greatest loss of white wealth since the Great Depression, the greatest loss of Latino wealth since the Spanish-American War, the greatest loss of Native American wealth since the Trail of Tears, the greatest loss of Asian wealth since the internment camps, I stand corrected. So the question becomes, why are we here? Have we learned nothing? I would suggest to you that we have learned, but people have also learned that there's money to be made in poverty. And we are going to soak the poor to the last dollar that they can possibly come up with. I mean, here we are dealing with two pandemics, the pandemic of COVID-19, of course, which has really ravaged the nation. Then the 400-year pandemic of inequality, racism, injustice that we are slowly coming to grips with. Now to add salt to the injury. Now it is believed to be the time to let the doors open and let the dogs of predatory lending out. So we don't have to ask who let the dogs loose. We have to look at the Trump administration opening up the door and letting the dogs of predatory lenders feed on people who cannot afford it. It is a shameful thing. As chairman of the New York State Senate Banking Committee, I strongly oppose the predatory lenders trying to evade New York State's regulations in order to make a profit on preying on those who can least afford it. For the past 15 years, New York State has made great strides working in close partnership with many of the groups that we gather here today. And we have done such great things to protect these people. We've got more work to do, but we've come a long way. Now with this proposed new rule, President Trump can literally erase 15 years of progress made in this state in consumer protection by allowing online lenders and the fintech industry to make loans through federally chartered banks using usury rates that are currently illegal in New York. Is there no, President Trump, is there no shame? Now is not the time to be proposing this. You've got, again, COVID-19, which has decimated many communities, including the MWBE community, the minority and women-owned business enterprise community. Some studies say that we're about to lose 50% of all Black businesses will not reopen. And I guess the Trump administration, taking great delight in that, says that he can get the other 50% with predatory lending. A two-for. Why stop with 50% when you can go for the rest of them, President Trump? Economic inequality is growing in New York and America. We need policies to reduce economic inequality, not increase it. The Trump proposal will make economic inequality even worse by allowing exorbitant rates. And I pledge hard. I'm going to do everything I know to join with such good people like the ones on this side, the ones you're seeing today, to join hands and say that we are not going one step backwards. I'm encouraging everybody to get in touch with all of these people on that you see listed today. If you're not in the fight, then you are the food. And I encourage you that, you know, it's better to be in the fight than on the table when they're feeding on you. So get to the organizations that you have. Get to your elected officials, be they New York or New Jersey or any other states. And I even said something good about New Jersey today. So you know that this is something that unites us all. Let's be clear, there's a lot good that we can say about New Jersey. So under those conditions, my friends, I am glad to be with you. These are the folk that are going to be on the right side of the barricade. And Ms. Ludwig, and all of these other, and the problem with naming one is you're already in trouble and I'm in trouble. I commend you all. Keep our feet to the fire as we hold them accountable and we push this back and not have poor people as on the menu being served so that richer people can get another chateau wherever rich people put chateaus. I don't know where. Thank you. I'm in the fight. I'm still in the fight. Let's win it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Sanders, for your strong remarks today and your continued leadership on this issue. We hope that you can, I know you have a very busy day today. We'll be starting the Q&A portion of the event shortly, and we hope you can hang around for that. Thanks again. And speaking of groups in the fight, we want to introduce next Rosalia Watkins, who's a resident council leader with Banana Kelly Community Improvement Association, and she's a South Bronx resident. So I'd like to turn it over to you now, Rosalia. Thank you so much. Okay, hold on one second. Rosalia, hold on one second. We're not hearing you. I see that you are unmuted, so let's figure out why we can't hear you.
Rosalia, you're connecting through your phone, is that correct? Okay. So I'm asking you to unmute by phone. It should give you an option to do so on the phone, I think.
Is that the 718-415 number?
Yeah.
Try that now. Can you try to unmute now? Thanks for your patience, everyone. Rosalia, can you hear me? There you go.
Okay.
Great.
Yay.
Wonderful.
Sorry about that, everyone.
No worries.
Hello, everybody. Once again, thank you so much for all the press people that are attending today and paying attention to this issue. A special thanks for all of the elected officials on the call that are helping with this fight. I am a person that knows deeply about this issue, unfortunately. And as one person who has suffered under the hands of predatory lending, I really urge everyone to continue this fight to protect citizens like myself. For the Trump administration to not only take away the state's rights to protect us, but to do such in such a flagrant manner that puts all of us, especially people in communities like mine. South Bronx is not the only community. It is all over America. But to put us in the danger right now during this COVID season to be trapped into a choice that might lead to massive disruption for families and small businesses is just utterly wrong. And although we're familiar with this administration's approach not necessarily being correct, this is one that we have to particularly fight so that people don't lose their homes like me, so that people don't end up in shelters like me, so that people who are struggling to hold on now without income, with disease, with all kinds of problems, for them to not feel that they have to run and get caught up in a predatory lending scheme. It would be really helpful for this particular regulation to look at ways they can promote opportunity within our communities, ways that they could support funding mechanisms like community developed municipal credit unions. It's not just a matter of fighting against these destructive predatory practices. At the same time, we need help in supporting fiscal opportunities in our smaller communities. So I want to thank all of you for paying attention. I want to thank all of you that are fighting for people like me. And I join you in continuing that battle because this is just too dangerous to leave alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalia. Thank you for speaking out today. We're gonna begin the Q&A in a moment. We're just gonna summarize briefly with a few slides, what's being proposed and what's at stake in New York and New Jersey. So first, as we begin it's a very brief handful of slides. We see New York's usury law caps interest rates at 25%. In New Jersey, it's 30%, which many argue, as I think most on this call would argue, is already too high. But with the proposal that the Trump administration has put forward, we would see the types of interest rates that states that don't have strong usury laws see, such as in California, where a typical payday loan is at 460% APR, if you can fathom that, and 391% APR across the nation where payday lending is legal. Next slide. So as you heard a few times today, states that have strong usury laws save money. Their residents are not preyed on by these predatory lenders that trap them in vicious debt traps. And so in New York, we save $440 million that would otherwise be siphoned by predatory payday lenders. 350 in car title loans saved. In New Jersey, it's a total of 346 million plus 790 million total in New York. That's more than $1 billion that would be siphoned. And that's to say nothing of the economic fallout from payday loans, such as the impact to people's credit reports, abusive debt collection that ensues from these loans, and on and on and on. Next slide. This is a map of the 16 states plus the District of Columbia that have laws like New York and New Jersey, strong interest rate caps. About a third of the country live in these states, almost 100 million people, and the proposal that the Trump administration had put forward would effectively wipe out these strong protections that we have. Next slide. And this is a real life example. Someone who took out a $2,500 payday loan with an interest rate at 185% ended up paying $16,000 in interest over a 4-year period. And that speaks for itself. So with that, we'll close this brief slideshow summarizing the presentations you heard today, and we're going to open it up for questions. Again, this is questions from media, members of the media only, please go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question. I also want to let everyone know, members of the media, while people are raising their hands with questions, we are recording this today, as I said at the top, and we will have that for you. If you would like to pull audio or video from today's presentation or would like to see the video, we can share that with you. It'll also be in the press kit that we email to everyone after today's event. So again, any members of the media with questions, please go ahead and use the raise your hand feature in Zoom.
And why don't we start with Alyssa Katz?
Hold on. Hi, I'll turn my camera on too. This is Alyssa Katz. I'm deputy editor of The City, and I'm also the author of a story published this week by Type Investigations and The Intercept about the deregulation of online lending. I wanted to hear if there's been any intention of the state banking superintendents in New York or New Jersey about potentially taking legal action once this rule is promulgated, as New York successfully did to beat back the OCC's fintech charter, which could have accomplished some of the same things. Have you been in touch with the banking superintendents?
Hello, Alyssa. Welcome to the meeting. I can answer the question about New York to some extent. You might have seen yesterday there was a letter that Superintendent Lacewell put out opposing. Sent to the national banking regulator, the OCC, opposing this proposal strenuously. I think we would look to our Attorney General for bringing legal action. And we know that our State Attorney General in New York joined with other state attorneys general around the country in bringing a lawsuit against the same regulator recently for a sort of parallel terrible action that went through. So we would encourage them very strongly in the AG's office, and particularly Attorney General James, to sue on this. And I would be very surprised that, I'll just speak for New Economy Project, if our state attorney general and others around the country didn't bring another lawsuit like the one they recently brought challenging this, because this has even greater, even more sweeping changes that it would bring, and is a clear racial and economic justice issue and a clear infringement on states' ability to protect their citizens.
Can I just comment?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just going to say, I think we should try to stop it legislatively on a policy basis before we worry about lawsuits. This is a bad idea. It violates the very basis of our federalism system, where the states have inherent powers to protect their citizens. We should not be relying on the courts. We've got to stop this now from a public policy point of view. If necessary, I know we in the legislature will support our Attorney General in any lawsuit that she brings, but I think we've got to make it clear that this hurts people. We've got to get the public to step up and say, Donald Trump, stop telling us you're trying to protect us when in fact you're trying to hurt us.
I would just add that, and I don't know if any of the legislators from New Jersey have any other knowledge, but I would say that at Citizen Action, we have been in close contact with the AG's office. We do not know of any specific actions that they're going to take, but given, I think as Sarah said, the record of the New Jersey Attorney General Grewal and Attorney General in New York and other states of speaking out specifically about this concept, about the rent-to-bank concept of evading, we would fully expect an appropriate response from our Attorney General.
Great. Thank you, Alyssa. Do you have a follow-up?
If I may just add a comment or so, I want to echo the words of what Beverly Brown has just indicated. I just very recently, in fact, were in contact with some of the officials in the state level with regards to the what would be the position of New Jersey's AG's office. And as it's been noted, while there is absolutely no specific position taken publicly as of yet, I would absolutely be just as surprised if they would not come out and take a very strong position against it. Very much similar to the action that was taken last year, as I pointed out in yesterday's discussion, where our AG, in fact, did lead along with one other and 25 other AGs throughout the country, taking on some of these very same predatory lending issues. So while there's no formal disclosure of what that position is, and I don't know that to be actually confirmed, I would be very surprised if that doesn't happen. I know that we as members of the legislature are looking at this very closely, and we will be monitoring it. Just like some of my colleagues here today, I expect that we will be trying to take whatever proactive action we can take towards making sure that this is something that we address and make the public aware of what's actually going on. But I agree that this is a really bad deal. It should not come down to the courts. It really should be something that we can and continue to fight for the protection of our own state ability to govern and be able to take action with laws that will protect our citizens and our residents in our state.
Thank you. Was there a follow-up? Oh, sorry. Did you have a follow-up, Alyssa?
Do.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
So my follow-up is simply Sarah Ludwig from New Economy Project had said that this proposed regulation is even worse than the previous round. I don't want to get too in the technical weeds, but if you could briefly explain what makes this proposed regulation worse than the prior round that is under litigation now.
I mean, I would say it's more sweeping in scope in certain ways. It's of a piece. We see them as in sequence. And like you said, you don't want to get overly technical. I guess I don't want to either, but I'm happy to discuss this with you, offline as well. But what this is about is the so-called Madden fix, the rule that the OCC issued recently to quote unquote fix what many people think was actually a good thing, didn't need to be fixed. And a lot of the reason that people don't know about this is because both of these rules, no one's heard of the National Banking Regulator, no one's heard of these rules, people don't know what's happening. And I think that this one is easier for people to grasp, that it's about allowing predatory lenders to enter into these sham arrangements that to basically pump toxic loans, high cost loans that target people in communities of color. And I think that's something that people get right away. And so it's got a sort of broader impact in that sense. It's a less technical set of issues that are raised around interest rates. And I think it's something that, it's taken a little bit of time because of the pandemic for groups to organize around this, but there is just a chorus of voices from all around the country that understand this and understand that it's really, really bad for our communities. So when I say it's worse, I guess I mean it's the scope of it, the racial justice aspects of it, the sort of immediately accessible sense that the Trump administration is trying to give a gift to an industry at the same time that the administration is doing very little to help people in incredible distress, to put it mildly.
And I just add that it also brings the banks into collusion with non-banks. It creates a broader community of predatory practices. And so by, the banks are acting as when we call it a rent-to-bank scheme, but if you will, it's a little bit like a laundering scheme where the banks are now participating in what had been a non-bank UDAP or unfair, deceptive, and abusive practice.
Any other follow-ups or questions? If you have a question, you just use the raise your hand feature.
Can I make another point, Andy, while we're waiting
Please.
for another question?
Please go for it.
I think that one of the other things that we have to look at here is the unfairness to those who are playing by the rules. We're trying very hard to keep New York banks as New York banks. And if this goes through, you're going to have competition from those who don't have to do bricks and mortar, who don't have to follow any of the rules that we've imposed in New York and I guess in New Jersey, which do cost businesses money. Let's face it, we understand that, but we've balanced it. We want to protect our citizens, so we impose regulations. Here now we're going to have a sham or a scheme that's going to allow, as Andy just said, I'm sorry, who was it, Sarah just said, who's going to allow these entities out there to make believe that they are banks, launder money through the banks, entrap people, and not have any of the requirements that our local banks have. So this is not only attacking people and businesses, it's actually undermining our own state banks who are doing the right things and following the rules, and who are trying to get into these communities and find ways to provide low-cost, appropriate funding for our small businesses and for our families. So this has an impact all the way across the board.
Thank you, Assembly Member, for raising that important point. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open it up to Emily Rusko. Please state your affiliation.
Hi, my name is Emily Rusko. I'm a general assignment reporter for Law 360. I wanted a bit of clarification on the estimated savings that were mentioned a few times throughout. Is that by comparison to the national average APR for states without the kind of usury regulations that New York and New Jersey have?
Andy, shall I answer that? So thank you for that question. The research, and I saw it dropped off the slide, so I want to acknowledge the source of that data, which is very, very important and something we take pains to do, so I'm sorry it fell off. But the Center for Responsible Lending did a report, and the data come from that report. And we can, in the press follow-up, send you a link to the report so you can see exactly how they derived, what methodology they used in their research, if that would be helpful.
It would, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for that question.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we're going to close things out right on time, a couple of minutes
Andy,
early.
one more point.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, have we mentioned the support that we have from our colleagues?
Thank you, Assembly Member. That'd be great if you can mention that, sir.
Okay. Both the activists in both states have worked with the Assembly members and the senators from both states to enlist the support of our colleagues. And our colleagues have signed a letter over a very short period of time. We've gotten a lot of our colleagues interested, and they've signed the letter joining us in opposing this proposed rule. So this is not just us as the heads of the committee speaking. We're speaking for so many of our colleagues who also see how terrible this would be, what an imposition this would be on our communities. So I just wanted to thank my colleagues for joining us, and to let everyone know that there's a letter out there from New York members and a letter from New Jersey members to the Trump administration opposing this proposal.
And those letters, thank you so much, Assembly Member, for mentioning that again. That those letters will be linked in the news release. That'll be part of the press kit. So you'll be able to see those. I know we have over 50 members of the New York State Legislature, for example, on the New York letter, and New Jersey has a letter as well. So as the Assembly Member said, just unbelievable outpouring of opposition from elected officials across the state. And that letter will be submitted today, because as also was mentioned earlier, the deadline for these, for public comments on the Trump administration's rulemaking proposal is today. So those letters will be delivered today. And again, you'll have that in the press kit that will be delivered to you shortly. So any last comments from the speakers today before we close things out?
Just thank you for pulling this together, and let's all keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
so
you.
very much, Andy. Also to all of you for taking on such an important cause and doing it in a way that we're able to reach out to the larger group of people and the larger population. And this is an ongoing struggle for all of us, but it's a fight that we're willing and happy to take on. Thank you.
Great. And thank you to all the elected officials who took time to speak out today. And just want to also thank Rosalia Watkins for taking the time today to share your story and speak out against this rule. We really appreciate that today. Again, just before we close things out, I just want to remind all members of the press, if you need a recording of this for any reason, just reach out to us and we can provide that right away, and look out in your inboxes for the press kit. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.